Hello. Tonight. No. Hello. Tonight I'm gonna be explaining the game of Dungeons and Dragons to you in a brief way. And keep in mind, I'm not the most experienced with this. I do have a fair amount of experience, and I have ran a game or been a DM before. So I do know what I'm talking about. However, I am not the end-all be-all of knowledge. There's many people who have a much more wealth of knowledge in this subject than I do. But that's not going to stop me from explaining it to you anyway. I've got, I think it's a point on right here. I can obviously point it out to you and elaborate what they do. Current DM in which I am playing with was so kind enough as to let me borrow his player's handbook, which is the most if you're gonna play a game, this is like kind of a core thing, like something you're gonna need. You can get away with not using it, but you're gonna have to look everything up online, which is kind of annoying. Honestly, it's just not ideal for what you're trying to do, and especially if it's all of you being a new player, you don't want to do that. It's also nice to be able to just open a book and find the answer to a question you have, like what does that do? Because it's easy to forget what certain things do. It's easy to remember a certain spell as a different spell. But basically, how Dungeons and Dragons, or commonly referred to as D&D, how that how that game works. There's as many players as there really wants to be. Typically, in most cases, it's at least 3 people. You can't really play it as a one-person game. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I guess you can, but like, it's not it's not Dungeons and Dragons. It's just running a simulation. However, if you like two players, that's still D&D. 3 players, that's when I really consider it being the D&D, because I consider it a true group there. Most D&D groups are 3 players and up. And typically how it works is if there's 3 players, and then there's if there's 3 players playing, then it'll be 2 players in a group, and then that last player is the DM, the Dungeon Master, or also known as the GM, which is the Game Master. They control the game. To make it easy on you, like in your thought process, these first 2, the ring wearers, in this case, to signify, they create a character. They create a character, and they control that character. That's it. Like, if they in certain instances, the character can have access to other things that it can control. Like, in base form, these characters each control just themselves. This third guy, the third player, he or she or they control everything else. Every other character, every NPC is run by this person, and then the rest of the 2, in this case, participate in this person's world, essentially. In D&D, there's multiple pre-written campaigns that can be used and whatnot, but it's also very common for a Dungeon Master or DM to make their own, or even just do homebrew. It's a very open and easily adjusted game. So there's 1.5 billion variations of it. Variations within it too. So there's like regulated versions, like actually approved, and then there's homebrew, which is a side. And a lot of DMs, what they do is they'll do mostly like what's in the book, and then they'll add like a little bit extra that they like, which I like that, because why not add a little extra flavor if it's tasteful and not overpowered or broken. There's also expansion books of these. There's books that do campaigns. There's books that monster manuals. There's books that cover expansions. And expansions can mean like more not more classes, but more subclasses amongst the classes. more backgrounds, more races, more variations of certain races. I think some spells too. Yeah, it basically, I don't want to say DLC, but it's DLC essentially. Typically, sometimes they can be found online. The newer stuff tends to be harder to find online. For cheap is what I'm saying, like for free at least. But they do expansions and whatnot. So that also is taken into account, like what GMs do. If they do all the expansions, they do some of them, whatnot. It all depends on the DM. That's the most important player of the group. And it's a lot of responsibility and usually a lot of work. But once you get like the hang of how the game flows and operates, if you have the desire to just make a plot, make characters, then it works fun for you, and it's not that difficult. But it is a lot of roles, and I personally like a lot of roles, but I think I still prefer being a player as opposed to being a DM. Because I loved being a DM personally. However, I am somebody who likes to let the story like follow the players, isn't like the characters are just as equal to creating the story as I am. And I can go outside the box, and I can show them pretty new things and new worlds and new ideas and like outside the box things for them to play with. As I love creating that, don't get me wrong, but I personally I like thinking outside the box in a box that I didn't create. At least I personally enjoy that a bit more in this case. Because when it comes to D&D, the reason why it's such an attractive game and so often watched, I should tap on these more. I apologize. It's why it's such an often played game. Is because you can do anything. Your character doesn't have a limit on what's possible. The dice are what control what you can and cannot do. Among with other certain things, certain abilities that come from races or classes, but more importantly, that come from abilities / skills. Everything that your character wants to do in the game, period. Like, I mean, period. Like, you want to climb a tree? Well, that's an acrobatics check. I'm going to pull out a piece of paper right here. Right over here. This and down right here. This is your skills. You get as you build a character, it tells you to pick certain proficiencies, and you get certain proficiencies in certain things. And also, as your character progresses, you can gain accessibility depending on many different ways to get different proficiencies that you didn't already have. And in addition to the proficiency bonus that you get with some of these right here, that number is responsible for the base plus you get here. So the plus number from this plus your proficiency bonus up here equals the number for those. I promise it's not as much math as it sounds like. It's really not. Like for instance, let's just say that to make it easy, acrobatics is dexterity. Let's just say your dexterity was like a 14. Okay. So what you do to calculate your modifier for a 14 number, it's real simple. I'll even write it down. Where's my pencil? Is it in my lap? I found my pencil. My pencil has been found. The 20th pencil absentee has been found.
let's just say over here let's just say you got a 14, you got a 1 and a 4. Yes, I know I write my 4 is kind of funny. That's on purpose. I don't always write them that way. When I write it fast, I do like, you know, just the fast little like that. Oh, that's wrong, like that. Yeah, but like when I'm being fancy and decorative, it gets that one. Okay. Now you take this number minus 10. So it's 14 minus 10. Now, I know you're asking yourself, what does that equal? What number does 14 minus 10 mean? It's too much math for me. It's 4. I don't worry, I didn't bring out the calculator. So it's 4 is left over, right? Okay. Now take that number and divide it by 2. So cut it in half. Cut 4 in half. Divided by 2. So it's 14 minus 10 equals 4. And then 4 divided by 2 equals 2. The modifier for dexterity in this case, like I said, is going to be right there. So it's plus 2. So you just do that for all of them. Now let's just, and you remember, you don't round up. You round down. So let's just say, I'm just going to write some random numbers. Actually, I'm going to roll them. I have my dice right here. Why not? A character is made up of a class, a race, a background, an alignment, ability scores, armor class, hit points, armor class, which is basically defense, speed, and initiative. Now, I promise that sounds like a lot to memorize. Good news, you don't have to memorize any of it. That's all going to be written down on your paper right here. I also use an app which it does not sponsor me, but I'm going to go ahead and support them anyway because I'm just that kind of guy. Fight Club 5e on the App Store is one I use. It's not like perfect or anything like that, but if you can copy and paste from the internet, like from like valid sources, and just paste it back into there, then you basically have a better version of this. Something that you can constantly you can basically just check the rule book if you just slide over a couple tabs, or check your like specific rule book that you copy and pasted in a couple times, like easily, just by sliding over a couple times. It's real good. But in this case, what we got over here, I'm gonna roll these numbers right here. I'm gonna tell you what I get for each of these. I'm gonna do strength right now. I just assumed it's 14 is my dexterity. I'm just gonna let that be. So the way that most DMs calculate strength, sorry, not strength, they calculate your ability scores. There's a few different ways. Usually they all are all oriented around the standard D6. And if you play Dungeons and Dragons, you won't hear it any dice referred to as a blank-sided die. It'll always be referred to as a D, whatever number it is. The most common version is a D20. D20s are what you do all of your skills and attacks with normally. Like I'm trying to find one more D6. I know I got plenty of them in this bag. There's no reason to hide from me. There you go. Okay, so I take 3d6. Now the way my first DM did it, and I kind of liked it, it's re-roll 3 of them, and then you just re-roll once. So that gives like a good like balance. You can get a bad stat. You can also get really good stats. So get some little help. So this is to calculate my strength. Okay, I got 4, 4, and a 5. I think I'm gonna change what I roll it to on this here because that didn't quite sound great. But that together is 13. And it's the perfect number to explain to you. Actually, yeah, I'm not gonna do that. Sometimes there has been some DMs that allow like rerolls, like you get one reroll per like roll. So like if, for instance, if I rolled my same number, I could be like, oh, I want to reroll my 4s, and I'll reroll it. And for instance, I got a 5. Now I could like there's some allow that you can keep the number prior, or you have to go with the new number. I prefer the version of you have to go with the new number even if it's lower. In this instance, I rolled a 5, but I'm not gonna do a reroll with it. And I'm gonna elaborate on what kind of number you get as a proficiency bonus if it's an odd number. Because notice how right here, this one's 14. It's +2. Now, the real easy way to think about it is just ignore this first number. Ignore it. That first number doesn't exist, okay? Now, just take this number, divide it in half, and that's what you get. So it's 4 divided by, 2 equals 2. So in this case, it's, don't even look at that 1. Don't even look at it. This number doesn't exist. So it's a 3. It's a 3 divided by 2. Now, if you know anything about numbers, which I guess I don't, but 3 divided by 2 equals 1.5. Now 1.5 is not a flat number. In most cases, in situations, when it comes to numbers, you'll round up from 5. This is not one of those situations. We round down from 5. So it's a +1. Because when you round down, it equals 12. Or +1, I should say. It's fairly simple, fairly easy, right? Now, I'm going to keep rolling these stats. I'm going to reroll one of these. Nope. Okay, I got a 15. 15 for the Constitution, and that is a +2 as well. Okay, gotta roll again. That one's cocked. Alright, and I'm gonna reroll. It's the same number, that's funny. Okay, that's an 11, and an 11 is +0, because it's basically, might as well be a 10, and 10 is flat, and so it's because, 10 divided, or 10 minus 10 is 0, and 0 divided by 2, 0. So it's real simple, real easy. It seemed the whole Dungeons and Dragons, all like the numbers moving. They're real simple numbers. They're not elaborate numbers. It's real easy to keep track of if you just don't get overwhelmed by it. Drop the dice. That's just like me. Alright, that's a... Alright, we're back to a 13, which is a +1. I gotta admit, this character's not great. This character's very just... I'm glad I'm not using this character. I dropped a dice. I dropped 2 dice, to be honest. I dropped that one again. Alright, 1 second. I apologize for the lack of... Mother... Come on, where'd you go? Alrighty, hello. Alright, so we got 14 there. See, like, this character is not great. I gotta admit. But it's good because I don't know. It's good. I lied. It's not that good. Okay. Obviously 14 plus 2, fairly easy. And for instance, like a 15. I already did the one that's +2. A 16 is +3. A 17 is +3. An 18 is +4. A 19 is +4. A 20 is +5. A 21 is +5. A 22, which like you don't do that. You only get to that like later levels probably. And that's plus what I said 20, 21, right? Oh, I can remember. Okay. So based on these numbers, we can calculate certain things. I can base if this is you get a certain proficiency bonus, which is natural. You can apply this bonus to all things you have a proficiency in, and I'm pretty sure starting at level 1 it's +2, and I think when it gets to level like what 5 or 4, maybe 6, it goes to +3, something like that. Armor class is taken up by your dexterity modifier, so in this case it'd be 2, so it'd be 12. So it'd be 12. Sorry, it's 10 plus your dexterity modifier. In this case it's 12. This is a natural armor class of 12. This character can add a shield or armor on top of that to increase their AC. Now certain races, certain races, but mostly certain classes can't use armor or can't use spells in armor. So they have to either naturally have a low AC or find other ways around that. Now an AC is, I think I already elaborated, is an armor class, but that basically is your defense. For instance, I'm going to find D20. If your armor class is 12, I'm just some fella. I'm a skeleton. I am a skeleton, and I'm just going to come up and whack you with my my sword. Now I'm going to roll this D20 right here. I'm going to roll this D20 right here, and I'm going to apply just a plus 2 to attack. Okay. I rolled an 8, so that means I rolled a 10 total, given my +2 to attack. In this case, now that 10 goes against your armor class. In this case, is 12. So since your armor class is 12 is higher than 10, my roll, I don't hit you, or I don't damage you at least. Excuse me. Now, for instance, if I rolled a 13 against your armor class, I hit you. If I roll a 12 against your armor class, what I personally do as a DM, but I could understand not doing it, what I do is I have them roll off. I have the player and I have the DM, like whoever it is, roll against each other. And whatever the higher number in that instance is, like period, I consider that one like the winner of like if it hits or not, you know what I mean, of the tiebreaker. I don't like to apply the modifiers into that last roll, because it's just, I think it should be best if it's just like, fate decide between the two. Initiative is your speed as well, I'm pretty sure, so it's also +2. Initiative is whenever like combat starts, a DM will basically say everybody roll initiative, and when you roll initiative, that you obviously take the number that showed up on the D20. In this case, I rolled a 1. I'm gonna re-roll it, but I'm gonna come back to the 1. Okay, that's not much better. I rolled a 2 this time. So in this case, my initiative would be 4. My initiative is 4. Typically, what DM does is he'll go around the room asking what you rolled on your initiative, and he'll put them in order. Put all of you in order, including against the NPCs that he's controlling in combat. And he will go around the room, and everybody will do their turn in combat, which allows them to do a movement action, which is in most cases is 30 feet. Sometimes it's 20. Sometimes it's 40. In some classes, you can gain speed, like monk class. You can. Let's just say for this sake, it's 30 feet for this character, because that's the most common. So you can move 30 feet on any of your turns. Now you can also use the dash action to move double your speed. In this case, it'd be 60 feet.
And typically, if you're looking at a grid, it's every space is usually 5 feet. Make it real easy. But if you take a dash, unless you're like unless you get something that says you can do it as a bonus action, or something says that the other, that's the character's whole action. That's you're done after that. But what most characters do, and like in the standard situation, is they will move X many feet, however many they want, and then they will either do a spell, sometimes an ability check, a skill roll, like one of these numbers. Sometimes they'll do one of these. These are mostly for out of combat, though. Those are mostly for like exploring the world and whatnot, and trying to do certain actions that aren't involving combat. But sometimes they are using combat. That's up to the player and also the DM. But typically it'll be a melee attack, a ranged attack, or a spell attack. Those are the most common actions after a movement. And depending on the spell, sometimes it'll have the spell user roll a d20 and calculate if it hits it or not. Sometimes it'll have a magic user, have the person the magic user is trying to affect. It'll have them roll a d20 against one of their saving throws right here. Now saving throws are calculated with these same numbers over here. However, those are also reflective of your class as well. Whatever class you pick is whichever one you have proficiency in those saving throws. It's typically 2. And sometimes there's ways to get other saving throw benefits throughout developing a character. What else do I need to do? There's alignment. You can like have your character like specifically on like a rule. I'm not gonna get into alignment. That's a whole thing in itself. It's kind of negligible, and in reality you don't have to do this, but like if you really put thought into a character and you really develop something that you like, it can become really rewarding playing as that character, like playing with that thought process, with that alignment. The range goes from lawful on one side to chaotic on the other side, and then on this axis it's good and evil. So in the very center is true neutral. Hit points is your health. Hit points are health. HP. Who would have thought? Now, the way that's calculated is whatever level you are. This also varies per DM, but whatever level you are in each class, at first level you get a full number at that. So like each class has a D assigned to it, a dice number assigned to it, a D assigned to it. Barbarians, I think, have the highest with a D12, and I think a wizard has a D6 if I'm not wrong. At first level, a wizard would have 6 health plus their modifier, which whatever that would be. In this case, let's just say it's Constitution. It's Constitution. It's +2. So I think his health would be at first level 8 for a wizard. A barbarian first level would be 14 health. And then from that point forward, let's just stick with the barbarian. You would roll another D12 every time you leveled up. So at like at level 2, you roll another D12, and so let's just say it's an 8. I'll find one. But like, oh, is that one? That's D10. You
remember to get that. You know, this is why I didn't think it would be a best idea to look for it. But here we are. We got 12. Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Okay, I rolled a 12, and I'm gonna see if I can fish out that. It wasn't as far as I thought it was. Rolled a 3 though. This dice is retired. So in that case, as a second level barbarian, since I rolled a full 12, I would get 12 added to that already 14 health. So it would be 26 health as a level 2 barbarian in this case. This is not, well, I'm not building a barbarian in this case. I'm not building a character right now. This is just explaining how the game works without getting into like building a character. I'm just trying to get a certain, like, very surface level fleshed out. See, like, okay, HP. Let's just write down a number. It's just because we already said barbarian. Screw it. Current hit points. We got 26. Inspiration. That's only if the DM gives it to you, or if you have a bard in your group. Basically. Hit dice. Need a drink, excuse me, my throat's dry. Down here is equipment. Now depending on what class you pick, it tells you what equipment you can start out with, and also what proficiencies you have with certain equipment. Now that doesn't technically stop you from wielding certain things. Certain things can't be used by certain things, but it'll mention that, and whenever you're looking at the class or race, that's not a common thing anymore to be like super limiting. But you won't get a proficiency bonus with attacking with it. Like if you're like, for instance, like if you're a wizard. And just a standard wizard, kind of like just spell using wizard, you're not gonna get a proficiency bonus with a warhammer, unless you find a way to naturally get something like that, like a proficiency bonus there with building character. That's not something you're gonna get a bonus to use. You can, yeah, sure, I guess you can try to use it, but like it's not what your class is going to tell you you're automatically better at, which logically makes sense, right? Let's just say let's just fill this out, for instance, based on that. I'm pretty sure this is me just going to be guessing. I'm pretty sure with barbarian, I'm pretty sure it's strength and constitution are the saving throws that it gets benefits in. I'm pretty sure. I'm gonna double check in a minute because I do have this book right with me. Like, I should use it, right? Over here, we've got we got death saves. If a character reaches 0 hit points, like they've gone to 0, or gone past 0, they enter the death saves, which is where you have this one and this one. And it's first to 3 basically. It's like rock paper scissors, but it's not. It's like flipping a coin, and more like flipping a coin, but first to 3. If you get 3 successes, which is a 10 or higher, your character survives. If you roll 9 or below 3 times out of 5, your character dies. Basically, they rip up the sheet, or like throw it away, or like put it in a binder or something. You know, something usually kind of like symbolic or like, you know, funny. You know, just because the player has to make a whole new character typically. I also you get a perception but that's based on your wisdom. So in this case, it'd be a +1. I think that's it. Like, of course, there's like more involving like fleshing out your character and like actually picking a race and whatnot. But we're not doing that. We're not gonna get into that. We just went with barbarian, simple and easy, just to fill out the stats, just to fill it out. You didn't have you don't even have a name, a race, or any of that pizzazz. So if you're still here watching, I'm gonna reward you with some dice rolling sounds, I think, because you listen to me ramble for a hot minute, and I wanted to explain the game before I made a character involving ASMR, which is going to be coming out as soon as well. It'll be a Warlock, because that's what y'all voted for. Warlock happens to be my favorite class, so ended up working out. Also, Warlocks are a lot of fun to build, because you can do a lot with them, especially involving their invocations, because that's the thing with classes. They all have their subclasses, and they all have their certain benefits. Like, for instance, all the magic users, they either get magic at first level or second level, and it's elaborated in a way of how they got their magic. Like, for instance, I'm gonna elaborate on this when I build a character as well, but I might as well tell you now, because why not, right? Wizards got their powers from studying, like being smart and reading books about it, reading books on topics, and finding tomes, and just being through intelligence. And that's why their spellcasting modifier is the intelligence stat, which I'm a silly goose if I didn't tell you what the stats were earlier. I apologize. The stats are strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. You can do, those are the ability stats. And the skills, which all of your actions, every single one of them out of combat, even sometimes in, is reliant on these actions. You can do everything in the game with these actions. And I'm going to read them out to you. There's acrobatics, animal handling, arcana, which is like magic knowledge. I might elaborate. Acrobatics is doing anything dexterity based, involving like climbing or like moving gracefully, basically. Animal handling is obviously working with animals, talking to animals, trying to cooperate with animals. Arcana is magic knowledge, being able to understand magic and having knowledge of magic. Athletics is like doing anything that's involving anything athletic that doesn't fall under the acrobatic section. So it's anything that's doesn't seem to rely more on dexterity, but is a physical action. Deception is like lying. History is knowledge of the past of the area or whatever it is that you're trying to do a history check of. It's like recalling things and recalling information, even information that you don't personally know, like you as a person, as you as a player, but you as a character do based on a role. Then there's insight, which one of my favorite skills. It's detecting like true intentions, or like what something does usually, or what someone following your gut feeling. Insight's your gut feeling, basically. Intimidation, making someone scared of you in some form. Investigation, figuring something out, but using your intelligence to try and either finagle or just look into it further. Where was I at? Medicine, usually healing or
anything involving healing or body knowledge or stuff like that. Nature's like nature knowledge, or understanding how what you're looking at involving nature, or how to operate with nature. Perception, seeing, not understanding, but like being able to see. Basically, that's it. Performance. If you're trying to do something in a certain way, and especially if you're trying to like cast somebody's attention, that's performance. Or if you're trying to play music or anything like that as a player, that's performance. Persuasion is the opposite of deception. It's not lying to somebody, it's just trying to convince somebody. Now in my playthroughs, how these roles work against other players. Some of them are just a straight roll against them, and they don't and the other player doesn't have to do a roll to detect it or anything like that. But sometimes they do. It depends on the roll. That's usually just like a kind of a general idea, like what you think would happen as another character is if somebody was like doing that to you, essentially, or doing an act. Like say your coworker, I'm being silly, your co-player is trying to pickpocket you. Don't you think that like you'd be able to feel like their like hand, and so I would have them roll a sleight of hand to pickpocket, and then I'd have you roll a perception, because it's not necessarily seeing, but it is detecting, and obviously you, it being your pocket, I feel like as long as you rolled high or didn't roll low, let's see right here. I rolled a 10. Now let's see, now I'm gonna roll for the other guy. That is sleight of hand. I rolled a 17. Now let's just say there's no bonuses. I'd give it to the 17 to pickpocket you and not notice it. Say for instance persuasion. Persuasion's different. In my opinion, the way I personally do persuasion is you cannot convince another player to do something, like to do it, unless like you can like convince them to do it, and it be in their will, and like but they have to say yes, that's what I'm doing. Like the player has to say yes, that's what I'm doing. You cannot force somebody to do it based on a persuasion roll. You can't be like, I want you to leave the room and then roll, unless it's like if you roll like roll like an 8. Yeah, no, that's not gonna happen. You can roll 19. That's not gonna happen. You have to roll the natural 20. You have to roll the nat 20 right there. The nat 20 right here. Because the nat 20 is the best option possible in any regard. If you roll a nat 20 on any roll, it's a wonderful result, like the best possible result. And the same on the same spectrum, the other side of it is is the 1 right here. This is the 1. So say for instance, I'm trying to climb a tree. I'm gonna try to climb a tree. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roll, and look at that, I rolled a 1. I didn't actually, but let's just say I rolled a 1. Wow, I rolled a 1. That means not only did I not climb the tree, but I probably fell down like a little bit, or at least stumbled and like busted my toe, which probably did nothing, but like it's just like one of those things. But honestly, if I'm the DM, I like to make 1s and 20s fun. I like to make them fun. Now this is a little outside the rule book. Typically, it's like if you roll a 1, you obviously miss, and the worst outcome the DM wants to implement happens. Now, what I do after that is sometimes I'll just have the players give me a flat roll, and we'll see what kind of number they get. And if they get a really bad number, then something bad really happens to them. I consider that like a luck roll. I think those are fun to implement as a DM in the right spot of if if something really good bad happens here, or if you just end up saving your butt out on accident. You know what I mean? Like, say you rolled like a 1 to trip up, like, while trying to climb the tree, and then like on the, let's say on the save, on this luck roll that I'm implementing, I'm saying, let's just say they get a they get a 1 to the thing, and like to fall. Now on the save roll, which is not a save roll, it's a luck roll. In this case, let's just say they get a 20. They'd like get into a situation where they, somehow ended up like on halfway on the log, like and like stuck in a position where they could climb up next time. That's not how it normally goes. How it normally goes is, like I said, you roll a 1, bad result happens. But in this case, again, like I said, another situation, some DMs do it like this. This is a third option. Let's just say it's the same result. I rolled a 1 to try to climb a tree. And in attempt to try and climb that tree, my DM can be like, okay, give me a saving throw of like dexterity. And let's just say I roll real low. And he'll be like, okay, like you fell and hit your head. And then he'd like give me, or either he'd roll some sort of dice, like a d6 or something like that, and he'd be like, oh, you took 5 damage. Something along those lines. Because like your character can get hurt out of combat, and it makes sense for your character to like be stupid, right? You know, because even we as people, even if we're smart, we do stupid things. We silly and clumsy, especially, and like it makes sense. I like to let the dice decide the game. I like to let the dice be the ones where the game flows. As DM and as a player, I just direct it. I just try to do things, and I try to make it happen. And the dice are what decide. And I think that's it. Like I said, a 1, worst possible result. A 20, best possible result. If you get a 20 on a melee attack, usually you result in a critical, like a critical damage. This video off with some bad jingling. Bag jingling, dice rolling, dice dropping. I don't think there's anything else I have to elaborate in involving how to play D&D. There's items, weapons. What else is there? There's like there's Now, whenever you come back to learn more about D&D, we're going to be building character. We're going to be building a Warlock.
gonna show you. We're gonna show you the main rule book a little bit. All right. We've already explained most of this to you. That's the creating character part. This is the ability scores I was talking to you about. This is ways to do ability scores. Alright, races. Here we go, races. You got an age, alignment, which is what I said about the good, evil, lawful, and chaotic. You got size of the character, we got speed of the character, which is how fast you can go, which is 30 usually. We got languages, and then we got sub races. Let's start over here. We got the dwarf. We got the dwarf. They get, where are they at? Yeah, that's the dwarf. They have their benefits here. There it is. Dwarf traits. They ability score bonus to their constitution. So +2. They live long. And there's stuff about their alignment if you want to do that. Their speed is 25 feet, which is not 30 because they're short. But they have resilience, so advantage on saving throws against poison. They also have proficiency with the battle axe, hand axe, light hammer, and warhammer. So this is one of those if you're trying to be like a dwarf, like wizard, you can do this and get like access to warhammer. Now there's different variations of dwarfs. There's plenty more that aren't in this book, but the ones that are in this book are the hill dwarf and the mountain dwarf, which is funny because I feel like a mountain is just a bigger hill. There's tons of other kind of dwarfs. Now on this next page we have elves, which I'm pretty sure get a benefit to charisma, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, there's many elven sub races, by the way. There's drow, which are basically dark elves, high elves, wood elves, and I feel like I'm forgetting something as well. I feel like I'm forgetting kind of elf. I'm sure there's more kind of elves anyway. Elves get a dexterity score bonus of +2 for the nimble. Yeah, so we have other bonuses and whatnot. And as a little interesting thing is they get access to a cantrip. So even if you're not like a spellcaster, if you are a elf, you have access to one cantrip. A cantrip is a super simple magic spell that can be used an unlimited amount of times. Typically they don't do a lot of damage. If they do damage, and they don't need, but they can also be used for like exploring the world or exploiting the world. We got halflings, which are just less thick dwarves, but they're super lucky. That's their main draw. They are super lucky. When you roll a 1 on a d20 for anything, you roll a nat 1, you can re-roll it. Yeah, isn't that rad? And we got, good old humans, the good old standard boys. What the main draw with humans is you get a benefit to being a human in terms of trying to think of the exact wording they have for it. There's like tons of different races or races, countries and whatnot humans can be from, and a whole ton of other things. But I'm trying to find exactly. They get, I think it's a feat. I think it's what it is. A feat is like a little bonus thing. We got Dragonborn. Got any Skyrim fans in the house? Dragonborn right here. Basically what it sounds like. Yep. Not quite Fusro-Da, but like, you know, pretty darn close. We got gnomes, which are like halflings mixed with elves. We got half elves, which I'm a big fan of this class because I built the bard my first playthrough, and I was a half elf, and I didn't realize how overpowered that was. Because they get a bonus to charisma. It's basically half elves are usually half human, half elf. Half orcs are about the same thing, but half orc, half human. Tieflings are basically people with demonic ancestry, or have some sort of demon in their bloodline. And there's a whole bunch of other variations and a whole bunch of other classes that are in other books, other creations, homebrew. A billion other classes exist, but like in terms of main D&D, those are the main classes, and then there's some variation other ones. But here we are with that's right, I meant the races. Those are the races. I meant the races. I apologize. Here are the classes. We're gonna give a brief little run through with it. We got Barbarian. We got Barbarian, the big boys. Plus 12. It's not plus 12. They got 12 hit dice. Barbarians. They typically don't have the best defense in terms of our AC, so they get hit pretty often, but they have a natural resilience to most kinds of damages. So that's their draw, and they also do a ton of damage. Bard, jack of all trades, can do a whole bunch of different skills. They are pick something you want to do, and they can do it really well, and a whole bunch of other stuff really well too with it. And they can also do some magic as well. So that's like their draw. You don't want to fully invest anywhere, but you want to be helpful in just about everywhere. Go Bard. Cleric. They can be pretty heavy metal in like a really holy and also like really angry way. All of these classes have a bunch of subclasses which take you into further development and further speccing later levels. And I think subclasses are my favorite part about D&D, other than the D20 rolling. Clerics, they obviously, it sounds like they're heal bots. They're not okay, they are naturally good healers and arguably the best, but they don't have to be healers. They can do a lot more. Like for instance, this is still that was all cleric. This is druid. Now think about this one, like getting their power, like they're like, wow, so their power of nature. I was gonna say they get their power from nature. This literally says power of nature. So, yeah, like forest energy beings. They can also do like wild shape, which means they can turn into certain animals and do combat like that. Really cool, and but they're not that played because of how they kind of limit the character in certain regards in terms of what they can do. Next is the fighter, which is basically, if you do a human fighter, you're like shooting for like, I've never played D&D before, or I'm trying to play the most specific character, because they can flesh out like real well. They can do it. Fighters can do a lot in combat, and feats will have like the extra feat from a human is a good combo with it. So it's a common combination. But fighter is a very common class. It's basically just, I don't know what I'm doing in D&D. I'm gonna start with this. However, barbarians also good for that, and I think it has a little more natural flavor to it. And then rogue is also fairly good for that, but not as well. See, like archetypes. Over here's the monk. The monk they don't really do any spell casting unless it's certain, unless it specifies otherwise. They're mostly a combat class. They are a class that doesn't use armor. They don't use armor, and they typically don't use weapons, but they can. It have to be classified into certain categories and whatnot, and it explains further. They can also do bonus attacks with their bonus action on their turn. So the turn has a bonus action, an action, and then a movement. So it basically makes that they can do 2 attacks on a turn. Just not the second one's not as strong. And then we got Paladin. Back over here, Paladin is like, think of like a holy knight, but like more in the knight part. They smite things like they like, hey, I'm gonna kill you because I want to, because I'm big and I'm not, and I'm heavy and I'm metal, and then, gosh, yeah, and then that's how they do it. That's the main draw about Paladins. Super good tanks. They also do a good bit of damage with it too. We got Rangers right here. Well, I'm over an hour. We got Ranger right here. We're running up in just a minute. We got Ranger right here. Bow user, I don't really recommend Ranger unless you're specifically trying to do something that one of the archetypes allows. Like, one of the cool things about D&D is you can basically kind of figure out a way to just about build almost any character. Like a character from a TV show or anything like that. You can make them in D&D typically. Now, for instance, the Ranger draw is where there's one of them where you can be like, I can't remember what exactly the term is. I think it's like Temporal Guardian or something like that. But you guard like the multiverse, you guard the different realms, you flash in and out of portals, you can open things and whatnot. So like that's the closest thing you're gonna get to like Rick from Rick and Morty. If you want to play D&D like that, like, that's the closest you're gonna get. And if you like, you'd have to specifically pick that trajectory to go. But other than that, they don't have a whole lot they offer. Like they're cool for in terms of forest stuff, but in terms of the forest stuff that they can do, other than more martial, like in terms of combat things, I think the Druid's better for that. But that's just my opinion, man. It's just my opinion, man. We got the Rogue right here, the Stealthy Boy. So if you're an edgelord and you don't really, you haven't played this kind of game before, but you want to play this kind of game, just do yourself a favor. Just go Rogue. Just lean into it. You know you want to if you're an edgelord. I myself have not gone Rogue because I just haven't done it yet. Because I think I like Bard more because I like spells. I like doodling with spells, but not like investing fully because I have not done Wizard and I don't know if I ever will, to be honest. It's kind of daunting. Rogue's main benefit is they do sneak attack damage, that they do like extra damage on attacks where they have advantage, which means like if their target doesn't know that they're being hit or like on behind them. Not tanky by any means, but like they do a lot of damage. And they're also good for the skills. Right there. And we got the Sorcerer. This is another magic user, main magic user. The main magic users are Wizard, Warlock, Sorcerer, Cleric, and Druid, I think. Cleric they get from their god. Sorcerers they get, sorry, I'll come back to Sorcerers. Warlocks they get from a patron, which is kind of like a god but not quite. Wizards they get from studying. Druids they get from the forest and like nature around them. Sorcerers right here, they are either naturally born with it or they come naturally in contact with it, or it basically just naturally flows through them. It's a occurring thing with them. It's not like they can harness it and whatnot, control it, but it's something that's just more natural. They themselves can be magic, you know what I mean? They do a lot of spells. That's their main draw. And they can do a lot of damage, but they're super glass cannons. They are super glass cannons. Warlocks right here, my favorite class. They can do a good bit of anything. They have invocations, so which means you can fly. It basically are like mini feats. It's like mini bonuses. They get their, like I said, they get their magic through packs. So basically, like some sort of energy, that the not energy, some sort of being they get their power through. And if you're familiar with Cthulhu or any of the great old ones, that's one of the examples of a patron. Actually, you can become a great old one. Yeah, you can become a great old one right there. That's, at least that's one that can give you a sponsor at least. Real cool. Yeah. Wizard. The wizard. Super smart, super incredibly smart. But usually really bad in combat. Sorry, usually really bad in hand-to-hand combat. They can hold their own with spells in combat for sure, but they have to like memorize things and they have to pick certain things that they can do per day. All of the magic users have different mechanics involving their magic, and in my opinion, the wizard is the most methodical. Like, you have to know what you're doing, you have to plan it ahead, and you have to like have an idea. Clerics, you can pick day to day which ones you want to use. Warlocks, you just pick 2 and they level up as you do, basically. Not pick 2, you pick a few and then they level up as you do. Sorcerers, I can't quite remember, but basically it's like that. Yep. And you pick a certain school of magic for wizards, and like you get really good at that. So like if you're shooting for like a necromancer, like wizard might be the way to go for that, but there's other ways to do like the necromancy thing as well. Like there's a bunch of different ways to do the necromancy thing, to be honest, in one with D&D. D&D's real cool. If you haven't played it before, it's worth your time. If you're this far in the video, like literally, if you're still watching this, 1, I love you. 2, go to sleep. 3, play D&D because it seems like you're either interested or you just like hearing me talk, in which case, thanks. Anyway, this has been me explaining D&D. Next time we talk about D&D, we're going to be building a character. Can you believe that? I can. Can I believe I went over an hour recording this? It was not the plan, but I can believe it. Good night. Sweet dreams.